So let's install Apache web server. First, we're going to do sudo apt update to make sure the repositories are all up to date. Now we're going to do sudo apt install. There it goes. It's going to ask if I'm sure because of the amount of space it's going to take up. Apache is a web server that's going to run on your server in the background, regardless if anybody's logged into it or not. And so if you ever wanted to see the status of a service on your computer, on your server, like Apache, you just simply do sudo systemctl status Apache 2, and it says it's up and it's running. So I had to go back to my AWS instance page and find my public IP address. Once I search that, I get the big Apache 2 default page. To show that is in fact it, since this is a service on Ubuntu, you can stop and start it whenever you want to by doing sudo systemctl stop. And if I do status again, it says it in fact stopped. So I'm going to refresh this page, and the site now can't be reached. So we're simply going to go and start it, and it's back up. Now, if you ever need to edit the config file for Apache, it's located under etc/apache2. You'll see apache2.conf file. So we're going to do a quick less apache2conf. And there's a lot in the configuration file you can edit if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, it's best just to leave this alone. So if you go back to your Ubuntu page, it tells you that to the Apache 2 page, it tells you that this file that you're seeing is located at var www.html, and it's the index.html file. So we'll do a quick less of this. And it can be pretty intimidating if you don't know what you're doing. So we're going to do a quick sudo vi index.html, and we're going to go and look for the main body. Let's search for it works. There's the header for the main body, so I'm going to put in an I for insert. Of course, Bo Morgan told us that I'm going to do that. Skate shift CZ because we want to save it. Since because it's a service, we're going to have to restart it to get the new. So you simply do sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. So once you restart the service, come over to the web page, refresh the page, and there's my, of course, Bo Morgan told us that it was. So if you know what you're doing, there's a lot you can do. I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of experience with HTML, so that's pretty much where I'm going to leave that. An awesome aspect of learning for this experience that we're doing, since we have an Apache web page up, that's a new area that we could get cyber attack from. So we're going to go and look at the access log for var/log/Apache. There's the access log. We're simply going to cat it right now because it hasn't been up long, and all you see right now are my interactions with it. It's all you see right now. You also know an error log, which right now it shouldn't be very much in here. But if you ever have a problem with a website, this would be where you go to look at first to see what's going on. And you can always pipe that cat command to the grep command. So in other words, send the cat command to the grep command and search for something specific that you might be looking for. For this example, I'm just going to look for shutting down, and it's going to highlight where I restarted the machine. Since we have this new area open for potential attacks on our server, it wouldn't hurt to do sudo apt update, and I'm going to pass it to Ann and do sudo apt upgrade with the Y argument, so that it will run both of them unattended. Now, a cool thing to do with the access log, you can do tail-f, which tells it to stay watching, kind of like a live view of the access log. So we'll move this to the side, and then we'll refresh the page. And if you were watching, you would see that it updated the access log from when I just refreshed the page. To get out of there, you simply just hit Control-C on the keyboard, and it would take you back to your browser. So now that we have more services running on our computer, especially the system services like SSH, which we're using to connect, and HTTP, which is the Apache web server, it's a good idea to be mindful of what port you have open and listening. My favorite command to use is nmap, and right now nmap's not installed, so I'm going to do sudo apt install nmap. Now that I have it installed, I'll simply do nmap, and I'm going to tell it to do localhost. And what it's going to do is it's going to scan the private IP address. And of course, I just have the two services running, 22 for SSH and 80 for HTTP. If I want a more detailed view of what all is available to the public, I would do nmap and then my public IP address. And as you can see, it took a little bit longer, but it also pointed out that I have HTTPS explicitly closed right now. So since we're using the server for learning, I'm not going to suggest that you really close anything. But for the purposes of education, Ubuntu has built into it what's called an uncomplicated firewall, which is really simple to configure, and we're going to walk through that real quick. So to make sure it's installed, we're going to do sudo status, sudo ufw status, and it's inactive. So what we're going to do is, to turn it on, we just do sudo ufw enable. That's asking if you're sure. And it says it's active and enabled, so it's going to restart whenever the computer restarts, and it's going to stay on. So now if we run ufw status, we just get it active, because right now we don't have anything. So for practices, we're going to do sudo ufw allow SSH, so that our SSH port will stay open. Refresh the Apache page. And right now, since nothing's explicitly blocking it, it's still open. But what we're going to do is we're going to do sudo ufw deny HTTP. And just to confirm that it's set, I'll do sudo ufw status. And you'll see that port 80 says denied and 22 is allowed. Now we'll go back to the Apache page, and it won't matter how many times you stop and refresh it. Even if we were to do sudo systemctl status Apache 2 and confirm that Apache 2 is on. We reload the page, it's still not going to load because ufw has it disabled. But we were to do sudo ufw allow HTTP and then confirm it with sudo ufw status and then reload the Apache page. It immediately comes up because now we're allowing. Now I suggest you keep it allowed, and then as we're going through this project, you take a look at the access log and see all the different IP addresses that it comes in contact with on a regular basis. You may be surprised at what you see. So your bread and butter in IT is going to be your ability to schedule tasks to run for you. So if there's anything you run on a daily basis that you can schedule, it's going to free up a lot of your time to do other things. And on Windows, that schedule task. On a Linux server, there's the cron tab. Now every user has their own cron tab, but there's also system cron tabs that run on a regular basis in the background. If you cat the /cron tab folder, you would see that there's cron tab dailies, weekly, monthly, and hourly that are all running in the background. And it gives you kind of a breakdown on how the scheduling part of it works of the command. Now if you're like me and the scheduling part of it kind of scared you, don't let it scare you, because there's a lot of free resources online like cron helper on how to enter it, and it gives you some suggestions down below. So like if you wanted something to run every 15 minutes. So to see the Ubuntu user's cron tab folder, you simply type in cron tab -L, and at the moment there's nothing set up for Ubuntu. So if we were to do cron tab E, set it up, it's going to ask which editor you want to use. I'm going to do nano just for simplicity. And everything that has the pound sign in front of it, those are comments that the system doesn't actually see, so those are notes for you to help you in your writing of the scripts. So I'm going to change directory back to my home and then change to my SBIN. Okay, this is this monitoring script that I actually use on a regular basis. Now what this does is it monitors my Samba share folder, and it will send me an alert whenever it gets to about 90% full. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tailor this to our server here. We're going to check the root directories. The DF is going to check disk uses -H, so it's going to put it in human readable form of the root directory. So we're going to exit this. We're going to do Shift-C to save it. And now we're going to do cron tab -E so that we can set this up as a cron tab to run in the background for me. So this will run every 15 minutes, the script of this monitoring script. And if you wanted to verify, or if you wanted to make sure that's actually going to do 15 minutes, you can simply go, paste it, and this will confirm cron helper that now we need to save it, but X, yes to save, enter. If we LL the SBIN folder, you'll see that this monitor is not executable. So we'll need to do sudo chmod +X to make it executable. This monitor, you can do tab autocomplete, and now let's verify that Ubuntu can actually run it, since this is Ubuntu's cron tab we're working on. And we didn't see anything because it's under 90%. So if you ever wanted to verify it worked, you simply just do sudo vi the script again. We know it's at about 30. Run it again, and it echoed the warning message. And now autocorrect it in the cron tab too, because it's looking at that script right there by itself. I know for some of you that's really intimidating right now, but just take it one step at a time. And Google is your best friend right now, especially things like chat. Now, another really frustrating part of your job is trying to find something and you're not sure where it's set up. But there are different find commands you can use. So let's say you didn't know where the access log was at on your server. You can simply use locate access.log. Locate is not in my machine, so let's do sudo install plocate. Now let's locate access log. And it's going to find the Apache 2 access log, and there's also another VH host access log. So by default, it's going to treat it as you're looking for something like this, and so it's going to pull up whatever related to it, both access log and the other host dash access. Now, this search is pretty fast because it's going based off a database, and it just updated that database because we just installed locate. Now, there is a built-in cron for this command that runs update db in the background. Now, it should run every night at midnight, but if you're ever in a bind and you think there should be something there and it's not finding anything, you can always run sudo update db, and it will update the database manually for you. Now, there's also the find command that was searched down through the directory that you specify, looking for exactly what you can do. Find var and give it a name for a file, do access log, and it will search var. It'll search var for anything that has access log. Now you can also do find in like the home directory for something mtime, which means any file that has been edited within a certain amount of time, and -3 means within the last 3 days, and that actually should be pretty much everything in your home directory since this is a fairly new server. Now find goes based off of whoever's logged in running the command, their permission, so that's why we saw so much permission denied back when we tried to search the var directory, because most of those directories are only root accessible. Sometimes it's useful to know where a command is being run from, so you can do something like which nano. It says it's coming from the user bin nano. If you work in an environment where they're going to be using conda a lot, typically they set up conda in a central location where all users can use it. So running the which conda command is really helpful for you to be able to initialize conda from the central location. There's going to be different ways that you're going to copy files from your server to another server or your server to a local machine. The typical ways you're going to be doing it is going to be either Samba directories, SCP, which is secure copy, or rsync is my favorite because of how fast it is. Since the majority of people here are probably doing this over a Windows desktop, SFTP is probably going to be the easiest to set up and quickest. And what that is it's file transfer protocol done over an SSH tunnel. So simply go to filezillaproject.org and download the FileZilla client. As you can see down here at the bottom, they have a version for Linux and a version for Apple. We're going to choose to start FileZilla now. Alright, to connect FileZilla to AWS, you have to go to Edit, Settings, Connection, SFTP, and then add key file. And then we're going to have to browse to where our key file is stored at. It's pin file. Click OK, and click OK. We go to File, Site Manager, New Site. The host name will be your public DNS. Protocol, we're going to do SFTP. Login type, we're going to do normal. And of course, the user is going to be Ubuntu. So now click Connect. And boom, we are connected. On the left is your machine, and on the right is the server. I downloaded this Garda-free website, which is a free HTML template. We're going to practice transferring this file from my computer in the downloads folder to my servers. I'm going to put in the WA folder. So all you got to do is select WA and make sure the file path is right to where you want it. This is the file path that's going to be coming from. And you simply just click it and drag it. You can see a status down here at the bottom. And according to this, it transferred. We'll go over to our command prompt. And we'll exit as root. And we'll do ls. And there's the zip file we just transferred. That's the most straightforward way to transfer a file from Windows to your Linux server. There are other ways, that's the easiest way to do it for this video series right now. Now we touched on folder permissions earlier, so let's do a quick ls-l here. And everything here is in the Ubuntu folder, so Ubuntu has permission to everything. Ubuntu has read and write permissions on everything in this folder. If we change directory back to our sbin folder and do ls-l, you see that root has read, write, and execute, while we have execute and read on the disk monitor sh folder. We did that because it's a script, and we gave it the execute permission by doing sudo chmod +x in order to set it as a cron tab to run in the back. So let's just make a hutch permissions text, and we can do ll instead of ls-l, and it does the same thing. In this situation, because we didn't use sudo, it's going to say that it's owned by Ubuntu, but again, it's still just read write. So let's say we wanted to give it executable permission. Now let's say you wanted to remove write permissions so that nobody can edit the file. Sudo chmod u-w permissions text. Now if we do ll, Ubuntu cannot write to the file, but root can still write to the file. And to take away the group's write permission, we just substitute the u for g, and then new LL again, and now nobody can write to it. Now let's say you wanted no other users in the machine to be able to read it. You do sudo chmod O for others minus R for read permissions.text. I do LL, and now only the Ubuntu user can read it, but no other users on the machine. If you want to see the groups that you're a member of, you just simply type in groups. And Ubuntu is in the admin group and in the sudo group. And you can always add somebody to a group or remove somebody to a group if you ever need to. So if you wanted to add B Morgan to the Ubuntu group, you simply do sudo user mod for user modification -A -G Ubuntu B Morgan. So now if I ID B Morgan, it'll say that I'm also in the Ubuntu group. So if you ever need to create a user, you can just simply do sudo add user, do new user in this situation, and ask for a password. And you can put in as little or as much information in the rest of this as you want to. It's not required. Now let's say we have this new user. You don't want them to have as much permission as you, so you don't want them in the sudo group, but you want to give them some permission to run some commands as sudo user. What you do is you'll edit a file called the sudo file. So you do vi sudo, and it's going to say permission denied, but if you do sudo vi sudo, it's going to open up for you. And it already has some reference points of some pre-configured things you can enable. But we're going to go down to the end, do enter to create a space, and we're going to put a comment to allow new user to reboot, and we're going to put new user all equals no password. And then the reboot command is in the sbin folder. So now a new user can do sudo reboot without having to enter in a password. Control X and Y to save it. And the good thing about using sudo vi sudo is that it automatically checks the context of it to make sure you didn't make any type of mistake. Now when we installed a package earlier, like Apache 2, when we installed Apache, we used the apt command. The configuration files for that is located under etc/apt for app. You'll see we have our apt.conf D directory here, which has version-specific configuration files. Of note here is the sources list. So if we cat sources list, these are the directories, the Ubuntu directories it's actually going to look for whenever we run apt update. And these are clearly defined URLs. And then you also see clearly defined EC2 references here. Now, as you go along in your career and you're adding different stuff to your server, over time you're going to be adding different third-party repositories as well to this list of source lists. So if you ever needed to do that, first you would do an apt catch dump. And what this does is it pulls the full list and details. And stop it, just hit Control-C. And we're going to do apt catch dump. We're going to pipe it to grep or package. I'm going to put a -I. I'm not sure if it's capital or lowercase. I'm going to pipe that to word count -L. That will count lines as opposed to words. And these are all the packages available that you could install if you wanted to. And these are extra repositories. They don't automatically reference these in sources because sometimes these apps aren't stable. And after doing that and referencing these third-party libraries, it's a good idea to do sudo apt update again. And then we're going to install what's called netperformance. Do sudo apt install netperf. If you're a programmer and you want to work in your own repositories, you can use a tool called neofetch. So we're going to do sudo apt install neofetch. And it's coming from the standard repository. So now if we do neofetch version, we have neofetch 7.1. What this does is it prints out a summary of your configuration and hardware for the app that you're working on. If you want to see details of neofetch, do apt catch show neofetch. And that shows the whole package configuration. And now we'll do sudo apt update. Make sure everything's up to date in the repositories we have on file. And if you see now, we show some updates ending, so we're going to do sudo apt upgrade -y. So in Windows systems, you have